G'day and welcome to our series on Western Australian folklore. I've spoken briefly about folklore in another episode, so I won't go into the whys and wherefores of why I started collecting this stuff. What I want to do is get straight into the stories. The first one is what we think may be the world's longest boat chase. When the West African registered fishing boat, South Tommy, was spotted fishing illegally in Australian waters, the Australian authorities gave chase. After 14 days and 6,100 kilometres, the South Tommy was finally caught 600 kilometres off the coast of Cape Town in South Africa. The vessel had a large catch of Patagonian toothfish, which the government seized and sold at auction for around $1.4 million. The captain and crew were sent back to their own countries at the owner's expense, and a fine of $136,000 was issued after the captain pleaded guilty to 2 counts of illegal fishing. The owners of the vessel didn't challenge the seizure, and eventually, in 2003, the vessel was sold with the idea of turning it into a dive wreck off the coast near Geraldton. After the internal fittings were removed and the ship made safe for divers to enter, it was towed about 6 kilometres off the coast and sunk. This was the second illegal fishing boat to be used in this way. The Patagonian toothfish grows to lengths of about 2.5 metres and can weigh as much as 200 kilograms. It's strongly flavoured, and although not caught for sale in Australia, much of the catch ends up in Japan. The next story is called Beaten to the Punch and features the Goldfields. Bessie Stewart worked at the Great Western Hotel in Coolgardie. Bessie was known as the Belle of Coolgardie, and young men tried to win her affections with gifts of small gold nuggets. Bessie was the cause of many fights between those ardent suitors, and the most ferocious of all was between Jimmy Reed and Bull Bennett. Both men regarded themselves as accomplished boxers, and both wanted to marry Bessie. For reasons of her own, Bessie didn't make a choice, one way or the other, and the two men decided to fight it out. They fought with bare knuckles behind the club hotel, as a large crowd looked on and gave them much encouragement. After 2 hours, the men were covered in blood and exhausted. Their seconds stepped in and stopped the fight with no clear winner. The fighters decided to spend 3 weeks recovering and then fight again to try and resolve the issue. Jimmy Reed went off to the coast to recover and do some training. He returned in time for the next fight, only to find that in the interim, Bennett had used his time more wisely and was already married to Bessie. This comes from a book called The Daughters of Midas, written by Norma King and published by Hesperian Press. The last story in this episode comes from slightly more recent times. It's called Getting the Right Result. The first bulk handler installed at Bunbury Wharf was a large and complex piece of machinery. It was operated by just 2 men, and there was a need to train others to ensure that the machine could always be in operation when needed. A list of 12 of the most competent workers was drawn up by management and submitted to the Waterside Workers' Federation. The union held a meeting, but came back and said that selecting the men in this way was against union principles, and any men who volunteered to be trained should be considered. So many men volunteered that the training places were expanded to 16, and management selected 16 of the men they thought would be best for the job. The union rep explained that this was not the way things were done at all, and the names of the volunteers had to be put in a hat, and the men to go for training would be selected at random. A meeting was held, and the union rep came back to management with the list of men whose names had been drawn from the hat. Management commented that it was a miracle that the men who'd been selected were the ones they'd wanted in the first place. The union rep simply responded, "Miracle my foot. I never put any other names in the hat." This comes from a book called Full Steam Ahead by John Willinge.